Hello, everyone. Nice to see you. Nice to see you, and I'm glad to be back with you guys. And if you can, please tell us where you guys coming from and where you guys tuning from. Amsterdam. Hey, hi, Roy. Nice to see you again. And today we have a very interesting session with our friends that are right here, Spectra Studio. Let us join us now. Hey, hello guys. How are you? Nice to see you. And,
Hello.
Hey, hey.
How's it going, everybody?
I'm just going to introduce you real quick to this studio. You probably know this work. And how could you describe Spectra Studio?
Well, we're a collaborative of artists and designers, engineers, working on immersive experiences. So, that ranges from live shows to permanent installations, projection mapping, and LED walls, and all of the fun technologies that we all love to play with and put together. And yeah, fun
Cool.
stuff.
And well, Harvey and I we know from a while, and with your partner, we just met in Mexico recently, right? You guys were working in a project with another designer called Jimung. You probably heard about it. And before we were in this call, we were talking about. I was making these questions about your studio because from the thing that I see in your content in your studio, I was not sure to to also understand quite well if you were doing commercial project or artistic project, right? And this is kind of like a question that keeps also emerging all the time. Like, should I just do art? Should I do commercial projects? And it's very interesting your case because I wanted to understand, like, if you guys are doing both, if you guys are doing just artistic projects, and as well, how does this survival in this industry work for you guys? But please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I think I've always been a big believer that you're going to do the work that you put out into the world and it's going to come back around. If you put a lot of the work out that it's commercial work, that's the sort of work that you're going to reflect back and people are going to see and know that you're doing. If you want to pull up a seat, we got Reese and the crew too.
Hey, can you please tell us your names?
Oh, yeah. We skipped the intro part. I'm Harvey Moon.
I'm Jay Borgward, Reese Murdoch.
Okay.
How many people are in the studio now, by the way?
Well, yeah, we're about 8 now. I guess 9 as of Monday.
Yeah.
So things are growing. Things are growing nicely.
Oh, nice.
Jay is one of the newer guys. 2 years now,
Yeah.
just about.
2 years.
Reese and I've been together for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, so your question was about like the commercial work and how we present ourselves as Spectra. So Spectra was actually a rebrand of a company I had before called MB Labs. And MB Labs was really a lot more, in that vague gray area between is this art or is this commercial work? And we got together and we decided that the best way forward and the way to do more of the projects that we want to do is to put those first and to put those up on the website and really shine light on the work that we love to do, that we'd like to do, and that we want to see come back around, and start to make a portfolio for ourselves that really reflects and helps other people identify what it is we really like to be doing, rather than just putting, okay, here's the biggest commercial project we've ever done, check it out. That's the sort of work that would reflect back, and maybe that's not always the most fun project. So we're trying to steer the ship towards the artwork and the fun creative works and the things that we all really enjoy doing, and less of the I'm going to say it, touchscreen UIs and lobby installations that we still do a lot of, but we're trying to shift that more towards the sort of experiential, fun, artistic, creative projects that we're really passionate about.
Yeah, I think everybody starts with a touchscreen. There is no start in
Yeah.
this industry without no ever making a touchscreen for a client or for a
Yeah.
project, right? It's the way it is somehow, right? And what is interesting is this shift between crossing the boundaries of the screen and getting these other new boundaries about pixel mapping on LEDs or in robotics or in all of these tools. And probably you guys who are tuning already know and are familiar with Spectra work, but there's a lot of like robotics involved, and working with this type of technologies, it doesn't seem to be easier, but also cheaper. It's really expensive to work with all these robotics. And how you guys have been managing to like going beyond the pixels and starting to work with more kind of like hardware technology with this in this industry.
I guess I would say that the hardware is actually from the very beginning part of the root of the company. So initially, I guess 12 years ago, and when this whole thing first started, we were doing a lot more product design development and thinking about hardware, kinetic and mechanical systems for products. And that was sort of some of the DNA that's sort of the foundation. The other founder was much more of an electrical engineer, had more, another guy was an industrial engineer, and together we were sort of doing a lot of R&D and prototyping in product design and development. And so a lot of that sort of carried over, and we started doing more with LEDs and building our own laser drivers or different electronic systems and modules for sensing, and it just became a part of our process. And what are some examples of things we've built that include, I guess, the sensor thing? Do you want to talk a little bit about that? We built our own sensor board.
The AutoCal thing.
Yeah. So we were lucky enough to collaborate with an artist, Gabriel Shama, who gave us a beautiful laser cut work, and we installed photo sensors, light sensors in it, so we could do auto projector calibration with it by doing vertical swipes, horizontal swipes, or gray code to see where those are. And it's to me something so satisfying, because we work primarily in software, to actually have something tangible that you can hold and say okay, I'm working with this. I made this. It's a really nice breath of fresh air. It feels so satisfying, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think with the AutoCal stuff, it's nice to not have to sit it can be a pretty manual, tedious process to do this stuff manually, and just having it calibrate for you and then you get on to the actual work is really nice to be able to do.
And I think this is kind of the way we met in the past, right? With the other company, and I was trying to solve a solution for auto calibrating things or projections and that kind of stuff, and somehow this has been driving your work into in many different levels. And I want to also which is the type of workflow or process or creative process that you guys create when you're involved into a new project. This is kind of way of working with technology and with the creativity.
Yeah, sure. I think when we approach a project, when a client comes to us, we're always thinking first about we love to get really early in the conversation so we can be a part of the creative and help steer the eventual technology towards something successful. So the first thing we think about is what is the project supposed to evoke? What is the feeling? What is the whole experience supposed to do? And then we'll start figuring out, okay, what are the technologies that might make sense here, that might not even be thought about on the project's perspective. And so it's really about the concept first. And we do a lot of prototyping and R&D, trying different things and building a palette of technologies that then we can apply for different projects and different clients. And all of these R&D projects will try and find some way that we can build our own artwork out of it and experiment with it and practice it and bring it into our own, in our own portfolio as a way of, having it as a really solid component for the project for whatever client might want to use it in the future. What's a good example? I guess the touchable walls is a good example for that.
That was something Harvey worked on for a little while, but we just decided one day, we're like, okay, we're going to work on touchable walls. We're going to put it up, not necessarily for a client, but just let's get some ideas. What can we put on this wall? How can we make this more exciting than your average, just like, touch the wall?
A lot of people have talked about this technique. They've asked, did it connect? Do you want to talk a little bit about how we did that?
Yeah.
Can you show us to us as well? Do you have some?
Let's pull up.
Let's pull up some video and show us. Like, this has been everywhere, and there's a lot of kind of like repos, and people are watching all over again. And this type of experimentation, I think it's kind of like crucial in the studio because it's a way to. Exactly. This one over here. Please tell us more about it.
So instead of using a Kinect to sort of track where the hands is, we actually made our own sort of laser light plane across the surface of the wall, and it's infrared laser, and then we have a camera watching it. So essentially, the camera will just see whatever breaks that plane. And we found it's a lot more accurate and a lot faster than Kinect. So you can get like individual fingers really easily, and it just feels a lot more real. And people love playing with it. I mean, I love playing with it. I'll turn it on and just mess with it for a while.
Yeah, actually, even with lidars, making this technique with the lidar, especially with Hokuyos and all of these type of lidars.
Yeah.
They seem to be a bit slow. I mean, this is kind of like my personal experience with these type of techniques. They seem to be, like the response between all of these kind of like thing that is happening. So what you're using here is a combination of two elements, right?
Yeah.
So we have these invisible lasers, the infrared lasers, projecting and line invisible plane across the entire surface. And when any hand touches that plane, the infrared camera can see it. And the infrared camera sees none of the projected image. So it's only seeing where the infrared light and your hand are interfering. The technique is called LLP. It's not that popular, but it's really, really effective, and it's pretty cheap. So anyone with a pretty cheap infrared laser and an infrared camera could do this effect at home, and you don't need a Kinect. Although you've done some experiments with Kinect that have gotten kind of closer results, but the rates that you're able to get really make it sort of a convincing experience that you're actually interfacing with the wall, that there's no technology in the way.
Cool. And what I like about this experimentation is that the ability to explore many different, ways to communicate things. Can you please show us a little bit more about? I'm always curious about this project with the Ken, or with the lamp. You have these two type of like.
Sure. Let's.
And something that is very important in this industry, it's about being an explorer, right? Exploring things. Never.
Go ahead.
Yeah, never end the ability to make exploration with the technology. Otherwise, can you please share this to us?
This was a technique that we had developed for a client project. As we said before, we were really working with how would this infrared technology work for a specific client project. And Jay had some really creative uses with a flashlight.
Yeah, we originally started with this technique with Vive trackers. And that way you could get sort of 3D positional results of where someone was pointing their flashlight or spray can or whatever relative to the wall. But those are, relatively expensive, and you need a whole tracking system in place, which is really limiting for applications. We switched to just basically infrared flashlight, and it's instant. It doesn't require a whole tracking system, and it feels very real. So we find it's a lot more satisfying to just play around with and to see, because it's natural light emitting from it's actual light emitting from the spray can or flashlight, and so it just ended up being a lot better for different applications. And though sorry, go ahead.
Now, where are you putting the camera in this setup?
Exactly. So we use the same exact wall, and instead of touching the wall, we just used infrared flashlights. And these infrared flashlights, wherever the same camera saw a blob on the wall, it could use that as an interface layer for whatever kind of wall. How do we, instead of the which is pretty expensive, as Jay said, how can we give one of these to everyone who comes to the exhibit? And so every single person has the ability to point at the wall and interact with it. There's all these different technologies that just having the setup already for touchable walls allows us to experiment and try out different sorts of techniques using the same gear.
And that's one thing that I really love about being with Spectra, is that it's like we're encouraged to try new things with stuff we already have. Like, it's not like, oh, we have this client work we've got to do right away, let's get to this. It's like, okay, if you have an idea, just go try it out, do some R&D yourself, and then present what you found. And I think it makes it just a really nice atmosphere to spend your days in, I find.
Yeah, and I think like some of these approaches we're taking in this work, it's a lot more satisfying. I think we can all agree to experiment and find our own custom solutions almost, versus taking this off the shelf stuff that's expensive, or we might not even be able to source it.
Yeah, so someone is asking about, your video got a bit cut in a moment ago, and Spectra was mentioning about the location of the camera. It was exactly in the same position as the one in the wall.
Yeah. So we're using a wide-angle lens up really close to where the projector is projecting, and it's a short throw projector. So essentially, wherever the projection light goes, wherever the shadow lands, is our same exact visibility for the infrared camera. And so we can see, there is sort of an occlusion area if their camera was right behind you, but since it's on the ceiling, having a sharp angle on the wall, we can extract all the finger touches.
Yeah, going back to this conversation about, you being allowed in Spectra to try so many things and try so many tools. At the end, the way that I see it is like a magician who has a set of tricks inside of his hat, right? And the wonderful thing about being a Spectra is like you guys become a more powerful magician the more tricks you have under this trick, because you can combine them, and when you combine different tricks, you can create something entirely different and entirely new. And one of the most important things in this process is to build this concept and to build this experience. And let's jump a little bit more into the building and experience a part of the studio. So you guys have been collaborating with artists to create artwork. Can you show us a little bit more about this type of like artwork where you're combining different techniques and different like tricks from your hat to make stuff which are an actual piece and not experiments?
Sure. So I'll share a sort of recent piece from a collaboration we did with G-Monk. So you mentioned G-Monk earlier, fantastic director, and I'll share this piece here.
Nice. Can you tell us more about this, please?
Yeah, sure. Maybe we can switch to another tab. We can talk through images. So it might be difficult to see, but this is actually a flat form. So it's about 2.5 stories tall. It's a aluminum frame wrapped in canvas. And then there's a backside. We have a mirror base. And it's actually a flat form that all of these 3-dimensional shapes are projected. And all of the 3D forms are actually made in Touch Designer. So we had a 3D model of different sort of decimated shapes that showed different holes or cutouts, and then re-rendered that perspective and projected back onto the object, moving lights around or changing colors. Some of that you might have seen was tied to the sound. So whenever there was a voice tone, light would emanate through these layered pieces on the right. And then, this object would then transition or change to different aspects during the show. And putting it together was about a year-long process with a very tiny budget. So we were thinking, okay, let's think about canvas stretching rather than, solid steel reinforced, wood or structure like this. So it was really, relatively light structure hanging from the ceiling. And we found some amazing fabricators in Canada that helped put it together and mount it. And then, of course, the whole thing in Touch Designer running in real time. We had 8 movable RGB lights, 3 projectors for each of these faces. The whole thing, we always do a full 3D simulation so we could see the entire show and all the content well before we even get to site and put it together. So a lot of that compositing and building the show and putting together all of these different pieces was done working remotely in a 3D environment.
And speaking to your point earlier, also, this project was a lot easier because we had those tools or those tricks in the hat. We were developing, we were doing R&D with lasers, so it was really easy to just slot into this project. We were doing R&D with controllable lights, so it was, again, really easy to slot into this project. And just the more time we spend, the more tools we have to just make something even better, even easier the next time.
Cool. And what are the things that have been improving your work in the last 5 years? What are these type of behaviors, beliefs, or habits that has been, being a bit more easier for you guys to inject your projects with this type of?
I think Prime Frame.
Yeah.
Prime Frame. So we've been developing, I guess, since the very beginning, a platform that we use for all of our client projects. And this is what we call Prime Frame. And it's basically all of our tools in one system that we can deploy on any project and mix and match depending on the needs of that client project. So it's been really helpful to kind of continuously build and improve upon this platform and always know that it's just going to get better and better for the next client.
So is that tool from you guys? You have been developing this tool?
Yeah.
Can you show us a little bit more how it looks? I'm very curious about it. So
we can't yet. We can't. We're on a full
so how does it work in essence? So this is a place where how could you describe this tool?
So
And what was the need before making this tool? Because like you as a studio always have needs to creating your own tools. But
Yeah.
What was your specific need for this?
So I guess in summary, when you're dealing with very large systems that have multiple computers, there's a lot of things that have to be coordinated about how each part turns on at the right time in the right way, and which content gets displayed on which computer, or which projector that's plugged into which computer. And so having a really holistic way of sorting and organizing and dealing with all of these occurrences that we have almost on every job, and then being able to add our own palette of tools on top of that became sort of our foundation for all of the jobs that we do. So in essence, it's a dynamic system that can load and unload any element that we need for a project based on just one config file. And this is sort of a similar methodology to a lot of large Custom Designer platforms.
Man,
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really, like, we keep talking about having more tricks in our hat, so to speak. Especially earlier in my career, I was building a lot of stuff just sort of one-off as per product, and you can usually build stuff really quick that way. But then it's a little more effort on the back end to try to extract reusable tools, and I think we've all found it a lot better to put in a little more effort on the front end and have something that we can just reuse, and it doesn't take a whole bunch of effort, and we can just dynamically load it into our system and have our previs that we can work in before we get on site, or even have a structure built.
I want to do a really quick shout out to Dylan Michael Funk, who had a big help in the Totem project while we were out there. Could not have done it without you. So he's here in the chat. Just want to say
hey, hi. How are you? So this is the hat, basically.
Yeah.
This and it sounds great. I mean, like for the community and for those who are already in this industry, this is like a very headache into our development process about having this container which contains a lot of our tricks, and then we can pull it in and out whenever we want. And we hope you guys can help us, the community, sometime to solve one of these crazy questions that we have all the time for using this type of tools. So I'm going to make a small pause here to talk a little bit more about the HQ, and then I'll go back with you guys. So you guys already know the interactive and immersive HQ. You already you're here because all the interesting courses. And I want to tell you that this is the first immersive school for designers, creative technologies, and touch designer artists and developers. And we have been working a very kind of like quite dense program for the HQ Pro. And we have a 7-day free HQ Pro program for you guys to join us. And there is over 60 full touch designer courses in the creative technology industry. Last year, we spent pretty much all the year creating, new courses for the HQ Pro community, and also making this kind of like a private sessions with the members of the HQ Pro. And I really recommend you guys to take a look. It's going to help you a lot with your workflows and with your knowledge. And I'm going to make the last shameless promotion. So I'm one of the producers of the Off Festival in Mexico City. Off Festival in Mexico City is happening at the same time of Mutec Mexico. So if you want to come to Mexico City, have some sun, mezcal, enjoy Mexican design, and then go into the morning to blow your head with the conference from Off, and in the night go to Mutec Mexico. Perfect day, the week of October 8th, 7th. All that week is going to be, and the weekend is going to be so powerful. If you guys are hearing this, you don't want to miss, because it's going to be madness week in Mexico City. All right, going back to you guys again. All right, so what kind of advice do you guys will give to people who are just starting in this industry? Right, people who are new in this industry and just starting. What kind of advice would you share with them?
I don't know.
I think like one thing just off the top of my head is reaching out and engaging with the community. That's like this one of the special things about Touch Designer, I think, is that the community, everyone's extremely talented and intelligent. Everyone's really nice and helpful, and you'd be surprised how far you can go with just reaching out to people and asking for help or critiques or input. And that's definitely how I built my career. I wouldn't have done it without the community.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of like different avenues that you could follow, and you should find your own passion that engages you enough to keep learning it. If you force yourself, or you kind of hope that you'll get carried along with something, then you're going to end up doing web design. So follow something in particular that you're really excited about and chase after it. And you'll see the people that really stick around with Touch Designer kind of have their own little specialty in that domain, and people start to know them because they're the LED guy, or they're someone that's really proficient at this thing. And that's how you kind of build up your skills and get to be a reputation for what you can do really well.
I think I'm going to add another one to the thing that you already said, like come to festival like often in Mexico, because you get inspired and blow your mind again, and you're relating with that community, and you're getting a bit more of a curiosity about what other people are making. That kind of stuff is also kind of like relevant, I would say. Like,
oh, absolutely.
And I was going to tell you like the opposite question, like what is the worst mistake, something that you say like we make this in the past, we don't want to make it again.
Always have a contract before you start working. Always have a contract in place, a solid contract. Get a good lawyer.
Yeah. And I think you were touching on this right when I joined, but if you're putting too much effort and focus into just your corporate work, that's really all you're going to end up doing. And it's a good place to start. Everyone's got to make money here and there, but if all you're making are corporate touchscreens, kind of to Harvey's point, you end up specializing in something, and you're the guy that does that. So as long as you have your own projects here and there that you can keep pushing along and iterating on, that's extremely important.
I mean, that completely resonated with me, because before I was jumping to this call, I was in a meeting with a client, and that project didn't resonate with me at all. And this client had money, but I don't want to take part of that. I mean, of course, there is a balance in your life that you have to make, right, between balancing and perhaps at the beginning of your career, you must do this type of projects for people. But as long as you're growing with this career, you have to create values to yourself. And I want to confess something here. Like I've been in the beginning of my career, I did a mapping project for Marlboro. This is how it started. Making this shameless, promotion for a cigarette.
Reese and I met on what was it? It was a Shell.
Something like that.
Yeah, we were projecting on a car for a gas conference, and they didn't realize it was an electric car. So they painted in a gas. Anyway, these things happen.
This thing happens, and there's a start, and everyone starts with something. Otherwise, you will not be able to pay your rent or have food. But somehow you have to start, doing what I think you guys are doing correctly, which is, putting the outside to tell the world the project that you're interested in, and you're gonna get more of those projects. You're gonna be called for that, not for painting a car or projecting to a Marlboro box. This is the type of work, and this is the type of stuff that we want to. So before we jump into the question, I only want to ask you something a bit more with one other of your tricks that you guys have in your magician hat. The perspective sculptures. Please, can you show us and tell us more about how they work and what you're doing there?
Sure thing. Let me pull one up. So yeah, these are some tricks that got a lot of attention, but it's essentially virtual production. It's really not much more, and there's a lot more guides available now if you're interested in getting into this stuff. But it's a render scene in Touch Designer that's mapped to the real world. So we're using a Vive tracker on my camera, on my phone, essentially. You can see there's some, issues in how this was mapped. There's some lines not matching up perfectly. But what you get is like a pretty approximate perspective of the camera towards the object. And then we actually use the tracker and put it on the screen to figure out where the screen is in real world in Vive coordinate space. And so what we have is basically a copy of this in the virtual space in Touch Designer. And then we can do a render. And we're using the quad reprojection technique to know exactly what content should appear that's perspective correct to that camera. So it's sort of a trick that only works for the camera at one person perspective at a time. So our actress here doesn't actually see the same thing. But it's been a pretty exciting, fun effect to play with. And, the excitement for virtual production was sort of the catalyst for a lot of these ideas. But, these techniques are really things that we've been working with in projection for a long time. The effect of the Trompe-l'oeil effect in photography extended to the forced or fixed perspective in projection mapping. And now we just have a little bit more technology to do this in real time. But all of these techniques and things have been in the palette for the sorts of projects we've done historically.
And what kind of technologies are you most interested in lately? This is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other technology that guys are very driving to?
Well, we're always doing a lot with computer vision. There's always more stuff with calibration that we're excited about, automatically calibrating stuff. The tracking systems have been really fun. We've done a lot with the Vive tracker and fiducial tracking and stuff like that. I'd say I'm really excited about the ESP32s. We're working on some kinetic robotic light systems, and the ESP32 has been really fun to play with and build hardware off of. What are you guys excited about?
I mean, I think, you covered the big ones. The CV stuff and the AutoCal stuff, I think, is really important. Again, those can be really manual and tedious processes, and just being able to just quickly jump in and focus on the actual work is a really powerful thing.
Cool. And what kind of...
Yeah, I love lasers.
I mean, who doesn't love lasers, though?
I don't know what to tell you. Yeah.
And what creative work are you involved right now? What is a project that you're excited about right now?
What creative work we're excited about?
Yeah.
I think that show. I'm still excited about that show.
Yeah, we do sort of live shows at our studio every month or so, where we invite people from the community to perform, whether it's live audio visual stuff, live code, live instruments, all types of things. And so we had one recently this past Sunday where some live code artists, a lot flew out from New York and San Francisco to come join us here. And it was fantastic. It's a really good, community gathering. It's really wonderful to see the same people, show up time and time again. And it's super inspiring to see how these artists come in and, display their work and display their talent for it.
Yeah, so just about every month we'll have a get together with our artist community. And this past one was like a New York algo rave community. So there was some touch designer stuff, but there was a lot of this kind of real-time coding. Sort of a rave setting, but it was good times. And every month we'll have something fun like that, whether it's a video show or something more eventful.
Yeah, making these type of things are super inspiring for the community and for keep doing this kind of stuff continuously. I'm gonna jump into some questions from the audience here. So you guys have the chat. If you make some questions around there, let me see if I have some questions here already. Whoa.
Where do we get
question,
our
guys.
ideas from?
Yeah.
Where do we get our ideas
Where do you get your ideas from?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes from. I'd say some of it comes from just like doing our like fun R&D days and R&D time. We're like, okay, this technology is amazing, but let's tell a story. Like let's figure out how we can make this just beyond, flashy cool technology. Let's actually put some meaning and intention behind it.
Yep.
And yeah.
We do a lot of submissions to different like art festivals and grants and stuff that might like help support new ideas, and we'll brainstorm like what concepts and projects we'd like to do together, and those, whether or not we get them, end up feeding back into real projects that we work on. We really do invest a lot in our internal projects in our portfolio, and so there's always 3 or 4 ongoing ideas that we come back to or evolve and grow and change and become a bigger part of something later.
I think I'm gonna touch really quick the one point that you guys mentioned about making something really meaningful, and I guess when you're making all these magic tricks, at the end they have a span of life very short, because you see them once and then you're not like surprised. But when you put them with an intention, with the whole experience, and you start making an experience based on different tricks and in different intention, that's when the real magic happens, right? I'm going to jump into a Roy question about a rather technical question. How do you guys analyze the camera and get the UV position from a camera fit? Do you guys use blob tracking, or do you start researching with AI models?
I'd say it's sort of all of the above. There's always different approaches, new things, especially with this AI machine learning stuff, new models and architectures that are coming out. There's also, I've done stuff too that are just really rudimentary, kind of just top space math stuff that sometimes you want this simpler thing. Like these AI models are really cool, but they are pretty heavy on your system, and they're effectively just, you're almost at the mercy of the data set that you're trained on. And it's not like when you're on site, if you see something funky, you go, oh, let me fine tune this model really quick. And yeah, sometimes you just don't need that much. So
for a lot of the touchable wall stuff, it was really just a threshold and some blurring, and some top layer processing to give us a black and white layer that we could use to augment the visuals. And a lot of times, if you don't need to know exactly the centroid of their touch point, that's enough. So blob tracking wasn't always necessary. There's a few instances where we will use blob tracking on the touch wall, but for most of the visual effects, it's not necessary.
One other interesting question here is like, who are some of your favorites or most influential writers, theorists, artists?
Yeah, Daito Manabe and Rhizomatics is like one of our favorite companies out there. Really doing amazing work in both the art and commercial space. Who else is
We should have him one of those sessions, right?
I mean, for me, really early in my career was Harvey. I'm more on the engineering side, not so much like a visual artist. So that's sort of what drives me, is whenever I see someone pull something off and I go, how the hell do they do that? Yeah. I'm not sure how that works. I love trying to break it down and then reverse engineer it and see what I can come up with. And just really early on, seeing the stuff he was doing, like really, it was really what pulled me into this stuff.
Yeah, he's the real Houdini right there. This is a question for Harvey. How beneficial was your grad school experience at UCLA DMA? And how did each of your academic journeys influence your work?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always went to art school, so I was always more about creating the art project, and the technology was just had to be learned to make the project happen. So, it's always project-based learner. Difficult. You really got to push yourself in a master's program, I think. But I came out of it with a really great community. There's the rebrand of Spectra came when I partnered up with two of the grads, and we decided on like how do we like kind of refigure this with our own foundation, with a new foundation. So two of those grads are now working with us at Spectra as a core part of our team. So the main reason I went was really I wanted to be embedded into a community that I really liked, and coming to LA and finding other like-minded people. DMA is a really amazing world and community, and yeah.
Right. This is one from Eric. Do you like to do audio reactive visual with live music?
Yes, absolutely. That's our thing. We love to. We partner with a bunch of different musicians, and we've done performances here.
Is there any Gotham here? Is there a community or city in the world that you think is a really great place to introduce interactive, responsive technology?
Really great. I mean, I think every city could use a community like that. I think LA has been great for us. There's a really awesome community that comes out to it. I think there's a lot of need for it. If in your community there isn't a group already, you should start one.
Exactly. I think that's the key. I mean, if that group doesn't exist, you should start one. And I think the type of events that you guys are pulling in is, starting a community where you can drive and keep that community, immersive in the same art you guys like. Right? I think those are the whole questions for the. Oh, there's one more. Sorry, about any advice on how to seek out and pitch to clients.
Oh, well, I think you're always going to get into a scenario where you pitch a lot more than you get. So be okay with that. And that's just how it goes. And get really comfortable pitching. Make yourself a template for a pitch deck that has most of the stuff that you can redo, change around the right words and description to fit that client's needs. We're actually pretty bad at outreach. At least I would say I'm pretty bad at outreach. So a lot of it's about filtering incoming and deciding what are the projects that I think are really going to be interesting for us to follow through on, or how do we, in the nicest way, say no to that client. Saying no is a really important lesson. That's maybe one of the big mistakes I could bring up again. Learn how to say no, and learn how to give the job to someone else if they're better equipped for it, or their friend that needs it.
So this is a question related to how do you approach a project where the client wants you something you haven't done before, but involves development risk?
There's always risk, and there's always a judgment on how much risk you're willing to take. If you have done something similar and you feel confident that you can scale that up, then you have to choose your own risk assessment on how much you want to go. I think that's always a balance you have to make, because there's always going to be new development that you need to do for every project that comes in.
I think I will add to that, a way to reducing risk into that is to make more art, because with the art side you don't have a client, or with your experiments you don't have a client, and that's a way of reducing risk, because you're iterating or creating all these experiments in a short scale, and then there's a client who has money, and then you have to take it into a bigger scale, into a bigger audience, and that kind of stuff. I think time is up. Thank you so much, guys. So website over there, Spectra, all the social media, you already guys know them. And
reach out if you have any other questions or want to chat.
So, see you guys in Mexico City soon.
Yeah.
Again. And thank you so much for all the people who were tuning in. It's a very exciting community to have all this incredible work from artists like you guys and from professionals like you. And thanks again.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.